So this is where the fishing fleet come in at Portsmouth. Depends on whether it's high tide or low tide how many boats are in. And I'm guessing I don't know what tide it is, I haven't got a clue. As you can see, there's some photo opportunities here if you're taking pictures in colour with those bright yellows over there. How do you fancy living in one of those? To be perfectly honest with you, a bit smelly when the tide's down.
When you decide to take up film photography, the reasons can be as many as the people who do it. I don't know why you want to try, or your budget, so this advice might not be suitable for you. However, having helped many photographers move to film, I know this advice worked for most of them. If you are a true beginner and unsure of f-stops, shutter speeds and ISO, then best begin with a camera that has an auto function. I do suggest you buy a camera that has the shutter speed, aperture and manual mode, so when you are ready to progress, you don't have to spend a fortune to upgrade. A film camera like this can be picked up for a very reasonable amount. The choices are SLR or bridge. A point and shoot with no controls will not allow you to progress your hobby. I'm thinking 35mm film here. So as an example, there's the Canon EOS range and the Nikon F50s and F80s style cameras. These all have settings of a modern digital DSLR with rechangeable zoom lenses available and an auto program mode. There are other brands that offer the same. There are also great cameras that have the settings you require but with a fixed lens using a built-in zoom function. Your choices are really what you want from a camera. The point I'm trying to make here is not to spend too much money to start. You might not take to film and you don't want a camera gathering dust in a cupboard. I speak from experience with some of my students. There are 120 film cameras that can be picked up quite cheaply, but these are in the plastic camera range and do not have any controls. I'm not really talking about lomography here. 120 film cameras known as medium format with controls are amazingly expensive and to be avoided in the early days of this hobby, I suggest. Also, don't spend a fortune on film either. Bog standard Kodak 200 or 100 or 400 Fomapan black and white to start. I would use fresh film stock to begin with, as you want to know the results are consistent so you can see how you're progressing with your photography.
Put little shops and things in the archways, called them hot walls.
Try as many different film stocks as you can afford. A good piece of advice I can give you is do not lock yourself into the I'm only going to go and take black and white pictures, because you will be missing so much. Today there are many different film stocks now available as film is gaining in popularity. There is not just ISO or ASA as we say to think about, but a great many types to try. Some films, as said in part 1, will give you perfect skin tones, although the greens might be washed out. Another film might produce amazing reds, but blues might be going slightly green. How will you know what is best for you and best suits your style of photography unless you give them a try? It's true, film photography has a lot of costs that digital doesn't, but to get the very best from a hobby, you need to put in that extra, don't you agree? With every new type of film you try, give yourself a project so you can test that film. Every film will come with an explanation of what it offers you, the photographer. An example of a colour film. The Kodak Ektar 100 is a fantastic professional 35mm for film for nature, wildlife and fashion photography that to its vivid colours and optimised sharpness. This also makes Kodak Ektar a wonderful holiday film, ensuring you come back with photos that burst with life. Or black and white Agfa Photo APX 400, rated ISO 400 but with the potential to be pushed to 1600 without a significant drop in quality. This 35mm black and white film is perfect for low light conditions, creative imagery and fast moving sports and children photography. And this is just an example of what to expect from suppliers when you're looking to purchase film. When you can purchase film from a company called Lomography, and you can buy a film that when you develop it and print it, actually got little aliens built into it somehow. I don't know how that works, not really something for me to discuss. And there's also one that's called bubblegum that makes everything look slightly pinky like bubblegum. But there, it's up to you. So I would suggest you devise a project for yourself to test what the supplier says about the film and see if you agree that the said film is as described. This will also teach you far more about every film than just going out to shoot some shots. Test the film, test yourself.
Just as a bit of history for you, because Portsmouth Harbour is so well defended, because out there you can see the Martello Towers, one there, there's two of them you can see. There's another rather white ferry coming in there. And you can see how well defended the harbour is. This is the entrance. When Napoleon was planning on invasion, he wasn't going to attack Portsmouth from this way. He was going to attack Portsmouth from the land side. So he was going to bring his troops in somewhere else, further up the coast, and then come round overland and attack Portsmouth from behind. So not only have we got all these defences here, but we've also got the Solent Forts, which are up on the cliffs behind us. But that's another story. Just interesting facts for you. So we bring my guys and girls here with their cameras and we play around with taking pictures of the water, especially if the sun's on it. And we practice zoom or not. We walk on down here. This is the square tower. I was wrong earlier, this is the square tower at this end.
My next piece of advice is to buy yourself a light meter. You can pick these up on any auction site for not very much money. Obviously it depends on what you are buying, but you really don't need to buy the best of the best. All light meters do the same job, and you really don't need lots of bells and whistles. It just needs to read the amount of light and give you an accurate reading. Light meters are really easy to use, and I have made a video showing you how to in less than 5 minutes. The link is in the description below.
So now I've come down onto that jetty you saw just now, and I'm looking back at the beach, this is where it's called the Hot Walls. And the reason it's called Hot Walls is because it doesn't matter what time of year it is or when it is, it gets very warm on that beach there, and it gets even warmer on a hot day. In fact, so much so that people are practically sunbathing naked on a hot day because it gets so warm. It's a perfect sun trap. But as you can see, this is a heck of a lot of fortifications. Imagine this filled with guns. It goes all the way up there. So if you were invading, you'd come in from the sea, you'd have to get past the two Martello towers that'll be firing at you, and then you'd come in through the harbour here. And you see how narrow it is? We're defended from both sides. Of course, these days it's just send a few aircraft in with a couple of nuclear bombs and that's the end of that. But then what would you be invading if you did that? Still see the Spinnaker Tower and the top of the lipstick over there. We're now going to go see the houses I think are the prettiest houses, prettiest square anyway.
Why have I suggested you buy a light meter if your camera has one? If you have an old camera, especially one that uses a battery for its light meter, it is quite doubtful it will work accurately after all this time. There is also the business of mercury batteries, which are not available anymore, and modern batteries give different readings. I think the point is to buy yourself a selenium cell light meter that works, and that will be fine. My video shows you how to best to use one, and I think I'd say to a beginner with a light meter, expose for the shadows. Remember I said film has a 5-stop latitude? So if you expose for the shadows, this will allow you to achieve full details in the shadows, and unless the highlights in the scene are very bright, you will capture the details in the highlights too. However, this is the point of practicing, isn't it? And trying different film types, so you can find what works best for you. Personally, with black and white film, I like very contrasty pictures, and the film stock I choose and how I select my exposure is aiming at that final result. I guess I'm saying buy a light meter and experiment, because in time that light meter and film stock you come to rely on will give you the results you expect time and time again, and that's no matter what camera you are using. I think it's probably one of the best bits of advice I could give anybody starting out in film.
And there of course is the man himself. A nice square garden here. Lord Nelson, 21st of October 1805. For those of you who don't know, he died at the Battle of Trafalgar. At the time he was Britain's greatest hero. Yeah, see, his last hours in England before leaving for the Battle of Trafalgar was spent at the George Hotel, High Street, Portsmouth, and then he would have walked down to here from there. Right, in front of you is the garrison church. It was badly bombed in the Second World War, but the second half, the back half of the church, wasn't damaged. So they... Looks like somebody's doing a bit of modelling over there. So they left the church as it was, with the roof gone, but the back half of the church is still used for services, and it's in remembrance of the soldiers, sailors and airmen who died in the war. That might be worth a picture. I wonder if I can get it without... Let's see. we're coming up to the cathedral I told you about with this spire. There's two cathedrals in Portsmouth. There's the Anglican one, which is up nearer the town centre, and this is the Catholic one.
So following on from the need for a light meter, I suggest you keep records of all your shots. With your digital camera, all the information about the picture is held in the EXIF file. This is pretty comprehensive, with ISO, lens size, aperture, shutter speed and even the GPS coordinates on laser cameras. So if you want to repeat the effects you created, but you're not sure how you did it, you can read all this data in your photo editing software. With a film camera, none of this is possible, of course, and it is a valuable asset not to have. When you are learning, and you see a couple of pictures you have taken that absolutely delight you, what made them work so well? What aperture, shutter speed and ASA were you using, and what lens? It really is a good idea to take a notebook with you and record your pictures. It only takes a few seconds and will pay huge rewards later on as you become all you practice. It also highlights the nightmare with a rangefinder camera when you realise you left your lens cap on, or with all cameras when you discover the ASA or compensation dial had moved without you realising. When you prepare for a shot, try to get into a routine. If it's a rangefinder, check the lens cap. If SLR, next check shutter speed and the aperture of what you had planned and that they haven't moved. If it's not an SLR or rangefinder, make sure that you have set the correct distance on the lens. For all the things that become second nature once you have had practice.
Okay, so my understanding is this door was damaged and the cathedral wanted a new door. They wanted something really special, and this door is really special. So they were looking for sponsorships for the door. So the local newspaper, Portsmouth News, offered to put the money towards the door. However, they did say they wanted their name on the door, and obviously the trustees of the cathedral said, well, we want this beautiful copper and door and all the metalwork and all the beautiful things, but we don't want Portsmouth News plastered all over it. That would be ridiculous. But they were the only sponsors who were offering. So it was agreed that the architects who designed the doors, or the designer, would add roots to the door. And as you can see, there's the roots. And you can see there, with thanks for the generosity of the News. So the News got their byline and the cathedral got their door. Cool, eh? Now this is quite a nice place to live. You're only 5 minutes from the sea. So now we're going to go inside and take a look. Now let's go down and have a look at the door. See, this is the door. See it from this side. The staircase is up to the balcony, and there is the organ. So I bring my students in here because this is where I teach them to use the ISO on their cameras, or ASA on their film, so that they can shoot in low light. I'm going to take you around and now show you the organ that looks like a frog. So a lot of my students say that looks like a frog. What do you think? Certainly looks like a face, doesn't it? And these are the stained glass windows that we take pictures of. Should we take one?
So with notebook in hand, you are now ready to go out and take pictures with your film camera. My next piece of advice may surprise my younger viewers. Opt for prime lenses. You may wonder what all the fuss is about talking about old film SLR cameras using prime lenses, as modern zooms are fantastic with superb quality. However, that wasn't the case in the past. Even expensive Mark zooms were not at the high standard or quality of prime lenses. So when budget allows, a 50mm f1.8 or f2 would be any photographer's go-to lens. If you are feeling particularly flush, there may be an f1.4. Next, you could have in your kit a 28 or 35mm wide-angle lens, and finally, to complete the collection, you could have a 135mm for portraits and distance views. I'm sure if you're used to using zoom, which most of you are these days, you will stick to a spot and use the convenience of the lens. However, with a prime lens it means you have to do the walking, but the quality of the glass will be superior to an earlier zoom and very well worth the investment.
So that was the inside of the cathedral. So that's pretty much our walk done. I will take the students on. I've seen most of it. Now I'm just going to take you around to the very last place we go, which is the garden, where we learn to do some macro photography and really get down to using manual so that we can control the depth of field securely, the way we want it, not the way the camera wants it.
So let me finish my advice in this video by saying everything is a learning process, and please do embrace your mistakes. You will make them, and it's all part of the mix. And if you have kept a notebook, you will be able to see just what went wrong. Also, I cannot encourage you enough, when you feel ready, do develop your own film. There is nothing quite like opening the developing drum and seeing the images that are actually on the film as you lift it out of its final wash. It is a miracle.
Have you got a golden line over your doorway of your house? This is the garden. Garden of rest. Which is quite nice. Someone having their lunch, look.
Finally, do not throw away expired film. It has a premium these days, and if you don't want to use it, there are plenty of others who will. So thank you for watching. I do hope my advice will help you to get the very best from your new hobby. And don't forget to like and subscribe so others can find my videos too. I am sure there are videos I have made before that you will find useful. So do please take a look. Goodbye until next time.
So that's it. That completes the walk. We now walk back. Take some pictures on the way, because there's some lovely old houses. So I've got to put the GoPro on charge. So I'll see you later.